I'm Grandmaster Sports Handicapper Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. When I first got started on the internet end of this industry, as most of you know, or hopefully many of you know, I go back to the scorephone days. You may have known me as JD of the ACC back in the 1980s. But when the internet first came into fruition, what we handicappers would do in order to get our names out, we would write articles. And there were a lot of websites out there that would take the articles for free, and in return, they would, of course, link to our websites. Inevitably, and I used to talk to webmasters, and they would tell me, look, Joe Duffy, you're one of the very few handicappers out there who knows what you're talking about. All the handicappers out there would write the same 4 or 5 articles. They'd all come out with their first article was on money management, where they proved they didn't even know what money management was. A lot of them, of course, would do the simple sales pitch. They would say, you got to have information, and I've got information, just making these bogus claims without giving you specifics. When we talk about information, we will tell you specifically where we get it. And there are different examples like that. And of course, they would also do the article about, here's how to shop for a handicapper. If a handicapper claims he hits 95% or he's got inside information, avoid that handicapper. Useful and true information, but overstating the obvious. Inevitably, somebody would tell you, don't bet with your heart. Another one, very true, but stating the obvious. But one of those themes where people would actually get into handicapping theory, some of them. Of course, a lot of handicappers didn't get past the examples I gave you, but then some of them would start talking about handicapping theory, and really topping that list would be the home-road dichotomy. And they would tell you, again, correctly so, that most teams are much better at home than they are on the road, so make sure you take a look at those home-road splits. They would forget one thing. The odds makers are more than aware of that. In football, home field advantage is considered as a standard deviant 3 points. So if 2 completely evenly matched teams were playing on a neutral field, if the game would be a pick'em, each team would be a 3-point favorite on their home field, hence the difference of 6 points between home and away. Each team would be a 3-point favorite at home and also a 3-point underdog, obviously, on the road. In basketball, it's usually 4 points, so hence an 8-point difference. Each team, if they were evenly matched, would be a 4-point home favorite and hence a 4-point road underdog. And in reality, the key is to find teams that actually fit under that variance, where their points per game differential is actually less than 6 in football, or more importantly, less than 8 in basketball. And the reason why we say less than 8 in basketball is more important is because they play a lot more games, so thus we can have more statistically significant data. Just as an example, let's say a basketball team in the NBA. They are plus 6 points per game on the road. They outscore their opposition by an average of 6 points per game at home, I should say. And on the road, they're minus 2 points. Well, that would be the standard deviant, an 8-point difference between home and road. Now, obviously, we are using rounded numbers. We break down those statistics to the 10th of a point. So, a certain team would have a plus 2.8 points per game advantage on the road or what have you. So the standard deviant, of course, would be 8 in basketball. But we look for teams that there would be maybe a deviant of only, say, 2 points. 2.5 points between road and home, and thus put a check mark leaning against going with that team on the road, but against that team at home. And that is truly where using home and road splits comes into play. Not just simply those people noticing that a certain team is so much better at home than they are on the road, and then playing the home team in those circumstances. There are examples where that does come into fruition. But there's where the wannabe handicapper completely misses it, because they've got to dig deeper into the numbers than looking at the obvious. So, again, more value in using those home road splits or betting on the road team, and then obviously even more so betting on the road underdog. If there is an over-adjustment, it's always for the perceived superior team at home, and therefore you can get more value going with the perceived inferior team on the road. So again, most of that value is going to be going with a road underdog. And it also exploits that ridiculous, absurd myth. I've heard it said by a few people, including people who sell picks. One of the golden rules of handicapping is never pick an underdog unless you really think that team is likely to win outright. This is pure gobbledygook and poppycock. What separates the sharp player from the square player high on that list is the ability to find teams that are not going to win outright but are going to cover. That's where the value is. Now, I will say, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in another video, but the way it works out, in reality, the home-road splits do benefit the home team a little bit more in baseball because there are a lot of stud pitchers that don't pitch as well on the road, and a lot of teams that are built for their home ballpark, but that's for another video. So when we talk about the home-road dichotomy, as a general rule of thumb, the key is to find teams that do not match, that are actually come within either that 6-point spread in football or that 8-point spread in basketball. We are talking more specifically those sports. There are other factors to consider in baseball, but that's for another time. Well, again, you want all the best sports picks, including the absolute best handicapping selections using the type of information that I tell you, the type of intelligence that I do. It's all at offshoreinsiders.com. I should say one thing further. Let me give you an example where I will tell you specifically where we get information. We further corroborate that, and it gets a little more complicated. We'd probably have to sit down and I would show you the way it's displayed, but Fox Sheets, which is the premium version of StatFox, actually breaks every statistic down relative to the cumulative number of points or shooting percentage or whatever of their opponents to date. It's kind of a strength of schedule way to measure. In other words, if a team averages 90 points per game to teams normally giving up only 85, that shows they're a better than average offense, where conversely you could have a team that averages 93 points per game but to opponents that normally are giving up 92 points per game, which means they're only 1 point above their average. But that gets a little more complicated when we're breaking down the home-road dichotomies. But the very basic of it, the key to this video, the point is the best value is finding road teams that do not rise to the 6 points or the 8 points that fall below the standard deviant, of 6 points in football or 8 points in basketball. And that is the real way, the real road to victory is using those home road splits and finding teams that do not have as big of a home court or home field advantage and as big of a road field or road court disadvantage. Again, offshoreinsiders.com for all the best sports picks.